you're almost all right. I'll do it afterwards. Um, we have Gimel base
No,
rather.
wait. Test Zion Vav, the last two Mishnayos.
Oh, I didn't put one in there. Okay. 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 The Kohen Gadol sometimes disqualifies. How so? If a Kohen's daughter was married to a
You're in the
Yisrael,
wrong Masechta, or wrong Mishnah. It is in because we're looking in the very last parak, Tes Zion Vav, the second to last Mishnah of the Masechta.
all right, here it is, right here. Witnesses may testify even if they saw by lamplight and moonlight, and we permit remarriage on the basis of a choice. There was once an incident where someone stood on a hilltop and said, "So and so, the son of
Basis
so."
of a voice, not a choice, just by the way.
I'm sorry.
On the basis of a voice, not of a choice.
Oh, no, brings up a voice. There was once an
What's the
incident
difference between friends?
when someone stood on a hilltop and said, "So and so, the son of so and so from such and such a place has died." They went to the hilltop and found no one there. Yet they permitted his wife to remarry. There was another incident at Zalman where someone said, "I am so and so, the son of so and so. A snake has bitten me, and I am dying." And they went there, but could not recognize him. Yet they permitted his wife to remarry. Rabbi Akiva said, when I went down to Naharda to fix the leap year, I counted the Chama of Beis Delhi. He said to me, I have heard that in Eretz Yisrael they do not permit a woman to be married by the testimony of a single witness, except for Yehudim and Baba. I said to him, this is correct. He said to me, tell them in my name, you know that the country is in turmoil because of ravaging troops. I have a tradition a tradition from Rabbi Gamliel the elder that would permit a woman to be married by the testimony of a single witness. When I came and presented the matter before Rabbi Gamliel, he rejoiced at my words and said, we have found a companion for Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. As a result of the exchange, Rabbi Gamliel recalled that some men had once been killed in Tel Azza, and Rabbi Gamliel the elder permitted their wives to remarry on the testimony of a single witness. It then became established to permit remarriage on the testimony of a single witness, and it became established to permit remarriage on the testimony of one witness quoting another, and on the testimony of a slave, a woman, and a slave woman. Reb Eliezer and Reb Yeshua said, we do not permit a woman to be married by the testimony of a single witness. Reb Akiva says, not by the not says not by the testimony of a woman, a slave woman, or relatives. They said to him, there was once an incident where some Levium journeyed into Zohar, the city of date palms, and one of them fell ill during the journey, and they brought him to an inn. On the return trip, they said to the woman, but where is our companion? She said to him, he died, and I buried him. And they permitted his wife to be married. They said to him, shouldn't the wife of a Kohen be as good as a woman innkeeper? He replied, when the woman innkeepers believed, this woman innkeeper brought out to them his staff, his baggage, and the Torah scroll in his possession.
Adrian Alach Maseches Yevamos. There's an interest. I just wanted to like reflect back on that first Mishnah you read, where it says that they permit on the basis of a voice. That they heard this guy talking on the top of a hill saying, "I'm Fred, the son of John, dying," um, and they said, "Okay, that's good enough. We didn't find anyone there, but Fred's wife now is permitted to remarry." Like, if I was Fred and I wanted to do a runner, wouldn't I do exactly that?
Yeah.
That seems. That seems very, very strange. And I was looking, I didn't go beyond, honestly, the art scroll, but there just nobody said anything about that. Like, why would that be plausible? Why would that be believable that you now permit somebody to remarry on that basis? It seems kind of sketchy to me. But who am I? Okay.
Okay. Yudal Aleph.
Actually, no. Let's do the kasubas now.
Okay. Don't confuse me. I have enough
Sorry,
trouble
sorry.
here.
Whenever we change over Masechtas, it get especially over a Shabbos, it kind of messes things up.
So there should be Aleph. A virgin is married on Wednesday and a widow on Thursday. For twice a week, the courts are in session in the towns on Monday and Thursday, so that if he had a claim concerning her virginity, he would go early the next morning to court.
Okay, so the claim about virginity is not just a guy being all happy about the fact that his wife wasn't a virgin and he thought she was. It's the fact that in those times they were married for a year before they lived together. And if she's not a virgin, that probably means that she has committed adultery while she was in her father's house, in which case she is forbidden to him. So the reason why the courts are want to encourage somebody to come and complain if they have a taina is because they don't want them to say, oh, you know what, I'll just forget it and I'll carry on living with a woman who's actually prohibited to him. Okay, so that's why we have this concern. Anyway, comes into Mishnah base. Basula
Okay.
kesubasa masaim. So the standard kesuba for a virgin is 200 zuz, almana mane, and 100 for a widow, also for a divorcee. And as we will see, for basically any woman who has who cannot, well, you know what? I'll leave it until we get to the.
Okay.
Okay, so it's 200 for a virgin and 100 for anyone else. Yeah, Basula almana grusha v'chalutza min ha'eresin. So in other words, a woman who was married but was still living in her father's house, had not gone to live with her husband yet in that first year, and her husband died or divorced her, or she became a yavama and received and did chalitza from eresin. Kasubas and Masayim, they're still a virgin, even though they were technically married, and therefore if they when they remarry, they get a full kasuba of 200 zuz. V'yesh lahem taanis basulim, and furthermore, the husband can and should take them to court if he has a taanis basulim that she's not really a virgin. Hagioris v'hashvuya v'hashivcha. Also, if a girl converted or was freed as a slave, um, or if a girl was captured by non-Jews when she was less than 3 years old, and right, so niftu v'nishnisgayu v'nishtachru, if they were um, if they were redeemed, if the captive was redeemed, if the convert was converted before she was 3 years old, or if she was freed as a slave before she was 3 years old. So Chazal said that basically 3 years is the line that we take, where we assume that if there was any damage to her basulim, the membrane has grown back. Okay, after that it doesn't grow back. So all of these categories are considered to be virgins in every respect. Hagadol sheba katana, katan sheba gadola. What happens if an adult male had this is it's difficult to say this out loud, but an adult male had relations with a girl under 3 years old. Okay, katan sheba gadola, or an immature male under 9 years old had relations with an adult woman. Umukas eitz, or a woman who had some kind of accident that broke a hymen. Kesubas and Masayim, Divrei Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Meir says this is no fault of hers, and she still gets a 200 zuz kesuba. Chachamim disagree and say mukas only on the question of the mukas eitz, the woman who had the accident, because she has, and they say because she has no tainus basulim, she falls into the category of those who only get a kesuba of 100. But they agree on the first two cases that because it's not a complete beer, or because she's under 3 years old and the hymen would grow back. Um, and the katan who's under 9 years old would not have broken the hymen.
Yeah.
Besula almana grusha v'chalutza min hanisuin. Um, if a woman becomes an almana, she becomes widowed. A grusha v'chalutza min hanisuin. If she was, and we mentioned that she's a basula almana, even to say, even if she was a basula when she was an almana, in other words, she went to the chuppah with her husband, and right after she walked out from the chuppah, her husband had a heart attack and died. But now she was married to him, and so we just loplug. She was no longer she's no longer an arusa. She's an asua, a grusha if she was divorced at that point, or chalutza min nisuin, or if she had chalitza. Kasuba san mane. All of these cases, their kasuba is just 100. Ve'ein lahen tainis basulim, and the other side of that equation. So it always goes together. When does it say explicitly? But basically, there's a direct correlation. If she gets if she gets a kasuba of 200, then it's only for cases where she has a tainus besulim. Okay. והגיורס והשבויה והשפחה שנפטו שנסגרו ושנשתחררו יסרס על בנות 3 שנים ויום אחד. So any of these categories of women, if they converted or were freed as slaves after 3 years old, or if they were captured by non-Jews and redeemed after 3 years old, we assume that non-Jewish captors are abusive of the women, and therefore we say, look, we're not gonna blame you for it, but the fact is that you're assumed not to be a virgin anymore, and ksuba san manev ein lahem tainus basulim, so they only get 100 ksuba, but there's no tainus basulim on them.
Hmm.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah, the story about the captives, unfortunately, is very relevant for our times. And when you hear these stories from these women who were captured by Hamas, Yamach Shamam V'Zichram,
no, this
what they went through is just unspeakable. Yeah,
you've almost, I'm not
your
sure which
Dalit
one
Dalit. We're in your Dalit Dalit now.
we, $1. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. $1.
that's right.
If two brothers, one the deaf mute and one a competent one, were married to two competent sisters, and the deaf mute husband of the competent sister died, what should the competent husband of the other competent sister do? Nothing, because she is released as his sister's wife. No, as his wife's sister. And the competent husband of the competent sister died, what should the deaf mute husband of the other competent sister do? He must discharge his wife with a bill of divorce, and his brother's wife is permanently forbidden. If two competent brothers were married to two sisters, one a deaf mute and one competent, and the competent husband of the deaf mute sister died, what should the competent husband of the competent sister do? Nothing, because she is released as his wife's sister. If the competent husband of the competent sister died, what should be the competent husband of the deaf mute sister do? He must charge his wife with a bill of divorce and his brother's wife with chalitza. If two brothers, one a deaf mute and one competent, were married to two sisters, and one a deaf mute and one competent, and the deaf mute husband of the deaf mute sister died, what should the competent husband of the competent sister do? Nothing, because she is released as his wife's sister. And the competent husband of the competent sister died, what should the deaf mute husband of the deaf mute sister do? He must charge his wife with a bill of divorce, and his brother's wife is perpetually forbidden. If
Okay,
two brothers,
that's it. We're done. That's 3.
okay, because this is all right. So we're going to start here next week because
This is your
this
parak where everything is split up.
everything is split up. It says so.
Yeah.
All right,
Right,
we're
so
going to
we're at the
start.
position where so tomorrow I'll know to prompt you to start
Okay,
that
so
case.
now we are back to you, Mamos again.
Yeah,
Or
Gimel base.
all right, Gimel Yud base. I'm sorry, that's wrong. Gimel Yud base.
No, no, Gimel base.
Oh, Gimel base. I thought it was that.
Yeah.
Okay, base. Gimel base. Come on here. Had it. Okay. If one of them was forbidden to one of the brothers by the Arab prohibition, he is forbidden to her but permitted to her sister. While the second brother is forbidden to both. There was a prohibition by commandment or by cause of sanctity. She requires chalitza but may not be taken in yibum. If one of them was forbidden to one brother by the Arab prohibition, and the second one was forbidden to the other brother by the Arab prohibition, the one forbidden to this brother is permitted to the other brother, while the other one forbidden to that brother is permitted to this brother. This was meant by the statement, her sister is her fellow Yavana, and she may perform either chalitza or be taken in yibum. If there were three brothers and two of them were married to two sisters, and to a woman and a daughter, or a daughter's daughter and her son's daughter, they require chalitza but may not be taken in yibum. If Shimon, however, releases them, if one of them was forbidden by him by the Arab prohibition, he's forbidden to her but permitted to her sister. If it was a prohibition by commandment or because of sanctity, she requires chalitza but not be taken in yibum. There were three brothers, and two of them were married to two sisters, while one was unmarried. If the husband of one of the sisters died and the unmarried one performed mama with her, and then a second brother died, Beis Shammai says his wife remains with him, while the other is discharged as his wife's sister. But Beis Hillel says he must send away his wife with both a divorce and a chalitza, and his brother's wife with a chalitza. About this it was said, woe unto him concerning his wife, and woe unto him concerning his brother's wife.
Okay, sorry, I lost track then. We went one Mishnah too far. So tomorrow we should be starting at Hay again.
Say hey again, okay.
Yeah.
right, Kimmel Hay. Okay.
All right, we're to
Yoma.
Yoma.
Okay. Zion Dalit.
Yes.
If what he washed his hands and feet, undressed, and went down into the mikveh, immersed himself, and came up and dried himself. They brought him white linen vestments. He dressed and washed his hands and feet. He entered the Holy of Holies to remove the ladle and the shovel. He washed his hands and feet, undressed, went down, immersed himself, came up from the mikveh, and dried himself. They brought him golden vestments. He dressed, washed his hands and feet, and entered the Holy to burn the afternoon incense and light the lamps. Then he washed his hands and feet and undressed. They brought him his personal clothing, and he dressed, and they accompanied him to his house. They made a feast for his friends for having left the temple safely. The Kohen Gadol serves in 8 vestments, and the common Kohen in four, in a tunic, pants, a hat, a belt. In addition to these, the Kohen Gadol wore a breastplate, an ephod, and a cloak, and a golden plate. Um, Warning: wearing these 8 vestments, they are consulted for the decision of the Urim Tumim. They are not consulted except for the king, the court, or for someone who the public needs. On Yom Kippur, eating, drinking, washing one's body, anointing one's body with oil, wearing shoes, and cohabitation is prohibited. The king and the bride may wash their faces, and the new mother may put on shoes. These are the words of Rabbi Eliezer, but the sages prohibited this. One of
And
each divine.
that's it. Yeah.
Okay,
This time I was on the spot.
okay.
Okay. Yeah. Truman started
Truma.
out.
If one separates part of Truma and Maasros, he may take from it Truma for it, but not for another place. But Meir says he may take Truma and Maasros for another place. If one had produce in the storehouse and gave one saw to a Levite and one saw to a poor man, he may separate another 8 saws and eat them. So says Rav Meir, but the comments say it may only separate in accordance with the exact quantity. The measure of truma, a generous person 1/40th, while Shammai says 1/30th, the average person 1/50th, and the grudging person 1/60th. If one separated truma and found that it was 1/60th, it is truma, and he need not separate if he added, it is liable to maishus. If he found that it was 1/61st, it is truma, but he must separate again according to his custom by measure, weight, or number. Rabbi Yehuda says even for that which is not close by.
Okay,
Okay,
done.
and
I lost.
all else we have Dal and Gimel. If the cabinet is standing in the doorway open to the outside and there is tumor inside the cabinet, the house remains tahor. If there is tumor in the house, whatever is inside the cabinet becomes tameh because it's the way of tumor to exit, but not the way of tumor to enter. If its wheel extends no more than 3 fingerbreadths beyond the basket, and the wheel contains tumor that is beneath the ceiling beams of the house remains tahor. When does this ruling apply? When there is a space of 1 cubic handbreadth in the wheel is not removable, and the cabinet is large. An oven whose opening is vented outdoors is located inside a house, and pallbearers pass over the opening. Beit Shammai says everything becomes tameh. And Silla says the oven becomes tameh, but the house remains tahor. And Akiva says even the oven remains tahor. There is an opening between the lower story and the upper story of a house that has been covered by a pot. A pot has a crack large enough for liquid to seep in. Beit Shammai says everything in the house becomes tameh. And Silla says the pot becomes tameh, but the upper story remains tahor. And Rav Akiva says even the pot remains tahor.
Yeah.
Okay.
And adios.
And else we have Gimel base. Separate pieces of Tomei food do not combine. These are the words of Dosa ben Harkness, but the sages say it does combine. One can deconsecrate Maisa Sheni onto an unstamped coin. These are the words of Rav Dosa. But the comments say one cannot deconsecrate Maisa Sheni in this manner. One must immerse his hands in a mikveh with the katos water. These are the words of Rav Dosa. But the comments say if one's hands become tame, his entire body is treated as though it had become tame. The insides of the melon and that which is cut from a vegetable that are truma. Reb Dosa permits their consumption by non-Kohanim, but the sages permit their consumption by non-Kohanim. 5 sheep, each of which is shorn of wool that weighs a mana and a half, are subject to the law of the first fleece. These are the words of Reb Dosa, but the sages say 5 sheep shorn of wood that weighs any amount are subject to the obligation. All rush mats are capable of becoming tummy, which corrupts tuma. These are the words of Reb Dosa, but the comments say rush mats can contract tumas midrash. All braided threads are tahor except those of a braided belt. These are the words of Reb Dosa, but the sages say all braided threads are capable of becoming tummy, except for those of the cord used by wool dealers.
And we're done.
These are getting a little more confusing. These last
Well,
ones.
um, yeah, so